And celebrations continue across China on the third day of the annual Spring Festival. I'm Beatrice Marshall in Nairobi. Welcome to Africa Live. We'll bring you the details on those stories in just a moment. But first, here's Uche Okronko with the day's business headlines. Uche.
Thank you, Beatrice. And here is a look at what's coming up on Africa Live. We'll take a closer look at Egypt's decision to launch a citizenship by investment program. And conflict compounds a logging problem in Sudan that is devastating its forests. Of course, all of that coming up within the program, but for now it is back to you, Beatrice.
Uche, thank you. Let's begin in Nigeria, where at least 34 people have been killed in coordinated attacks in the northwestern state of Kebbi. That's according to a state police spokesperson who says 7 villages in total were raided in the Arewa local government area on Wednesday. The Lakurawa armed group, which has a history of similar attacks in this region, were blamed. It is the latest deadly attack in the country, which is battling a deep insecurity issue, which includes everything from a jihadist insurgency to intercommunal conflicts and secessionist agitation to rampant kidnappings for ransom. In response, authorities have sought military support from the United States, with 200 troops expected to assist. Well, Deji Badimosi is in Lagos, joining us live with more. Deji, what can you tell us about the attack across communities in Arewa local government area in Kebbi State?
Well, Beatrice, what we're learning is that this attack actually happened at a district, a very remote district that shares a border now with Niger Republic. This district is known as Bowie, and of course, just as you've reported, 7 communities were attacked. And what we are gathering, because just before we came on air, I spoke to someone in Kebbi State, and what they're telling us is that, look, this Lakurawa terrorist group now invaded a particular village known as Mamunu. They got in there to rustle cattle. So after rustling cattle, then, the people of that village, now I'm talking about Mamunu village, were able to call for reinforcement, and in the process, these terrorists opened fire and started killing people randomly, and that as they made their way out of the village, they kept killing people along the way, thinking that, people they met were maybe the reinforcements now called by members of the Mamunu community. So that's exactly what happened from what we have gathered. So 7 communities so far affected, 34 persons killed. The police has confirmed that attack. And the majority of the people killed were actually killed in Mamunu community, where the cattle were actually rustled. And this is it's a modus operandi of the Lakurawa sect. They usually rustle cattle that they then go on to sell to sustain their operation. And this attack happened in an area that I would say is to a large extent ungoverned, because you do not have government presence there, you don't have the police there, you don't have security agencies there, and it takes a while before help could come from the security agencies. And by the time help eventually came in this case, the terrorists had already left, and they had actually done their havoc.
Well, Deji, how is the government and its agencies, though, dealing with this latest attack?
Well, so far we haven't had any comprehensive response at all from the government. The military has not spoken yet, but of course the police spokesperson has spoken, confirmed the attack, and that men are now being deployed to the area to ensure that people are safe. But we haven't heard anything yet from the military. Don't forget, this attack actually happened on Wednesday, and the reason why we're getting the information now is just because of the remoteness of this community, and that it takes time for most of these communities. You do not have communication networks, so it takes quite a while before information actually filters out, and it's usually not easy accessing these some of these places. But so far, nothing yet. Nothing yet from the military, nothing yet from the government. But the police says, that men have now been deployed to the communities now, and that things are under control, and that they are going after the terrorists. In fact, what we gathered from the police is that they are cordoning off the forest around the area to make sure the terrorists do not have any escape route. But, we get this kind of statement often when attacks like this happen. The most important thing is that we're talking about a community where you could consider an ungoverned space. Government presence very low. You do not have security agents on ground. They're miles, hundreds of miles away, and intervention usually very difficult and usually would come in very late. Beatrice.
Deji Badimosi joining us there from Nigeria. Thank you. Meanwhile, Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu says worsening insecurity is giving him sleepless nights. He described terrorism and banditry as unacceptable and a major threat to development. Although he says he is confident Nigeria will overcome the crisis, progress remains slow. CGTN's Kelechi Mekalam reports from Abuja.
For nearly a decade, Benjamin Polycarp has been plastering walls on construction sites in Nigeria's capital. It's a life shaped by survival, not by choice. 13 years ago, he was a student back home in Gwoza, Borno State, hoping to become a structural engineer. Then insurgents attacked his community. He fled after members of his family were killed.
I don't miss plenty things for my life.
I have missed a lot of opportunities in my life. Even this job I am currently doing is not what I planned for my life. But for the insecurity, I would have gone far in life. Many times I flash back to when I was in school. I would have finished school and gone further in life.
Benjamin is one of more than 3 million displaced Nigerians, according to the International Organization for Migration. Nigeria has faced insurgent violence for over 15 years, and attacks have spread beyond the northeast. Analysts say the crisis is worsened by insufficient security personnel and poor intelligence sharing, adding that without stronger public trust and cooperation, security agencies cannot succeed alone.
The Nigerian citizens sees insecurity fight as that of government and the criminals. The reasons being that lack of trust in government by the Nigerian citizens. But in fairness, citizens are supposed to own this fight up to 70%. That is only when the security forces can do their work effectively.
Nigeria is also turning to international partners for support. The United States deployed troops to help train Nigerian forces, while other allies are providing equipment and intelligence support.
With America's arrival here with their troops, I think it will make a lot of difference, positive difference. They are coming in with training, technological support, and all what support we have, which we need at this particular time.
For Benjamin and many others, security is not just a policy goal. It's a difference between survival and a second chance at the future. Kelechi Mekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Authorities in Sudan say a drone attack attributed to the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces has killed one person in a town near the Ethiopian border. 8 others were injured and 16 houses destroyed in Thursday's strike. Kurmuk is in Blue Nile State, which is the latest front in a civil war that began in April 2023 between the RSF and the army and is now being largely played out with deadly drone strikes. The expansion of the war into this region goes back to early last year, when the RSF announced a surprise alliance with the SPLM-N faction, securing access to experienced fighters, land and border areas. The SPLM-N is currently advancing an army on positions in Blue Nile, with the town of Yabus identified as their stronghold. The conflict has led to a division within the country as the army controls the center, north and east regions, while the RSF dominates the west and parts of Sudan. To Sudan now, and the UN says evidence shows that the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces carried out acts that point to genocide during their takeover of a strategic city in the western region of Darfur in October. This is according to a new report by the Independent International Fact-Finding Mission released on Thursday. The UN mission says the RSF, which has been fighting the army since April 2023, committed ethnically targeted killings. widespread sexual violence and enforced disappearances in El Fasher, which had been under siege for months. The paramilitary group had previously denied such abuses. Meanwhile, the UN Human Rights Office has expressed concern over the killing of at least 57 civilians in separate drone strikes earlier this week. The strikes targeted North and West Kordofan region, West Darfur and Sennar state. The UN Human Rights Office has called on both sides to stop the violence and fully embrace dialogue towards a ceasefire.
A shelter for internally displaced people, a hospital, a market, and 2 primary schools were among the civilian objects that were hit. These latest killings are yet another reminder of the devastating consequences on civilians of the escalating use of drone warfare in Sudan. Attacks on civilian objects must stop. The parties must take urgent measures to protect civilians. Both sides must stop the violence and fully embrace dialogue. And all states, particularly those with influence, must do all in their power to end the transfer of arms that are fueling the conflict.
Meanwhile, the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs has said a 26-truck convoy has reached the cities of Diling and Kadugli in South Kordofan. The convoy, carrying life-saving supplies for more than 130,000 people, is the first to arrive in over 3 months. The UN says it was delayed for several weeks due to high levels of insecurity along the route. Diling and Kadugli were under prolonged sieges, with commercial and humanitarian supply routes cut off. Recent analysis from the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification Committee pointed towards likely famine conditions in both cities. Now, as Muslims across the world begin observing the holy month of Ramadan, a time traditionally marked by abundance, charity and shared meals, families in war-torn Sudan are preparing under very different circumstances. The conflict will soon enter its 4th year, and the economic fallout is being felt on every market stall and kitchen table. Prices of basic staples have surged, supply chains remain fragile, and many say feeding their families has become a huge challenge. Here's Naba Muhyiddin reporting from Port Sudan.
With the holy month of Ramadan just started, markets across the Muslim world are filling with shoppers preparing for a time of fasting, prayer and family gatherings. But in Sudan, a country is still ravaged by war. The spirit of preparation is colliding with deep economic strain. In Port Sudan, the country's main Red Sea gateway, nearly everything on these shelves has traveled long distances. Transport costs, inflation and supply disruptions have pushed food prices to levels many say they've never seen before.
The cost of staple foods like corn and wheat is almost double compared to last year. It's skyrocketing and people can barely afford to buy food for their families. One day of shopping cost me $9 at least.
Ramadan is traditionally marked by generous meals shared with relatives and neighbors, tables filled with meat, sweets and dates. This year, many households are scaling back, buying less and carefully calculating every purchase. Vendors say the pressure is visible in every transaction. Customers are asking for smaller portions, cheaper items and alternatives to staples that once defined the season.
Most of the items we sell come from various parties across Sudan. The high cost of transportation and the scarcity is affecting the prices and the people's ability to purchase. We see people asking for necessities only during this important season.
For traders, rising costs are not hurting customers, they are squeezing livelihoods. Yet the approach of Ramadan still brings a sense of duty to keep markets stocked, even as profit margins shrink. Religious leaders say the hardship is a reminder of Ramadan's deeper meaning, patience, generosity and solidarity with those in need.
People can cope with the declining situation, poverty and exhaustion if there's a higher value.
Ramadan is a reminder of resilience and sharing, and it's a good chance for us to help each other, not only during Ramadan, but afterwards.
Across Port Sudan, families are finding new ways to preserve the spirit of the month, sharing simpler meals, pooling resources with neighbors, and leaning on community support networks to make iftar possible. Even as economic realities reshape traditions, many say the essence of Ramadan, faith, resilience, and togetherness, remains untouched. Neba Muhiddin, CGTN, Port Sudan.
And over to the Democratic Republic of Congo, where a ceasefire proposal by former AU chairman Jose Lorenzo that was due to take effect on Wednesday is yet to be implemented. Kinshasa already accepted the proposal, but the M23 rebel group rejected it, saying it was not consulted. Over the years, multiple ceasefires have failed to hold, with fighting continuing in the DRC's eastern region between the government and M23 rebels. Lorenzo is the current president of Angola, which has played a major role in peace efforts over the years. CGTN's Robert Nagila has more.
The Luanda process emerged from the Luanda roadmap adopted on July 6, 2022, in Angola's capital, Luanda. Its goal was to de-escalate tensions between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo. However, the M23 rebel group, which Rwanda denies backing, is not a signatory to the agreement. The Luanda process calls for an immediate ceasefire, the restoration of ties between Rwanda and the DRC, a joint verification mechanism, tackling armed groups and the return of refugees. However, the ceasefire failed to hold following renewed fighting between the M23 and the DRC military from October 2023. In early 2024, the process was relaunched under the leadership of Angolan President João Lourenço. Following months of negotiations between the DRC and Rwanda, a permanent ceasefire was agreed on 30th July 2024. After several rounds of unsuccessful negotiations, a breakthrough came following a meeting held in the town of Rubavu in Rwanda between the intelligence chiefs of Rwanda and the DRC on the 29th and 30th of August 2025. The two sides agreed on neutralizing the FDLR rebel group, which Rwanda views as a threat, the withdrawal of Rwandan forces from the DRC, and implementing a joint verification mechanism agreed in the 2022 roadmap. This year, following a meeting held in Luanda between President Lourenço of Angola and the DRC President Félix Tshisekedi and President Faure-Gnassingbe of Togo on the 9th of February, President Lourenço proposed a ceasefire between the M23 and the DRC that would take effect on February 18th. While the DRC accepted the proposal, the M23 says it was not consulted. Robert Nagila, CGTN.
Festivities continued across China on what was the third day of the annual Spring Festival holiday. In Xinjiang, Hebei province, a 100-meter-long drum formation paraded through the streets, striking a majestic start to the new year. In Huangshan, Anhui province, a spectacular intangible cultural heritage show unfolded. Fish lantern processions glided along the streets, while breathtaking iron firework displays lit up the night sky. Local residents in Suining, Sichuan province, staged their own gala featuring more than 10 performances, including song and dance. The event drew over 1 million online viewers. Vibrant dragon dances wound through the historic streets of Zhongshan in Guangdong, drawing cheers and applause from residents and tourists. And cross-strait bonds shone bright as Xiamen in Fujian province and nearby Kinmen Island held their joint fireworks display to ring in the new year. And in 2026, the Spring Festival represents more than just family gatherings. It also highlights China's growing appeal as a premier global travel destination. This year, a sharp rise in international flight bookings pointed to a notable transformation in worldwide travel patterns. Our reporter Olivia Ho has more.
As a cultural powerhouse in its own right, the Spring Festival, with its rich traditions and immersive experiences, is cementing China's status as a must-visit global destination. According to China's National Immigration Administration, daily passenger crossings during the holiday are expected to exceed 2.05 million, a 14.1% increase year-on-year.
I'm here for almost 6 months, so I will go to almost every province, if possible, hopefully. To Xi'an, of course, Chongqing, Shenzhen, Ningbo, Shanghai, and maybe other places as well.
I wanted to go to Hainan because, everybody that lives in China should be there at least once, right? And also the seafood is very famous.
Data from major travel platform shows that over the past 2 weeks, flight bookings by international travelers for the Spring Festival period have quadrupled compared to last year. Shanghai, Guangzhou, Beijing and Chengdu top the list of gateway cities.
I think it's pretty cool. It's totally different from Europe or anything else I've ever seen. I haven't seen enough, to be honest, but I do love the food, I do love the culture. I think you guys are very united and there's a big community in China, for sure. I definitely have to travel back and get to know it better and see other cities, which I'm very excited about.
In the UK, police have arrested the younger brother of King Charles on suspicion of misconduct in public office over his dealings with late financier and sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. CGTN's Yolo Abdavid reports.
It took place at the Sandringham estate, a private estate owned by King Charles. And it's significant because obviously he is a brother of King Charles, a son of the late Queen Elizabeth, but also because of the historical allegations that have surrounded him and his association, if I can put it that way, with the former financier Jeffrey Epstein. Now, Epstein, of course, died in US custody in 2019, but the allegations that we understand, and it hasn't been confirmed yet by the Thames Valley Police, but the allegations surrounding his term in office when he was a trade envoy for the United Kingdom, a role he held for about 10 years, and it is on suspicion of misconduct in public life that at 8 a.m. local time, plainclothes police go to his new home on the Sandringham estate, where he was moved to from Windsor Castle just a few weeks ago. And the element of surprise means that the police can search the property, they can take laptops, phones, they can take documents, and that will help their investigation. And then Andrew Mountbatten Windsor has been taken to an unknown police station as yet, where he will be cautioned and he will be interviewed, and that interview will be recorded. He'll be allowed to have a lawyer. There might be a duty lawyer, but he will probably, we expect him to have his own lawyer there as well. And the police could have him in custody for possibly 24, 36 hours, but with special permission, he could be in that cell and in the police station for up to 4 days.
And now to the Republic of Korea, where a Seoul court has sentenced a former President Yoon Suk-yeol to life in prison for leading an insurrection during his failed attempt to impose martial law in December of 2024. Yoon was also sentenced to 5 years in prison last month for abuse of power, obstruction of justice and falsifying documents. Former Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun was also convicted as a co-conspirator in the insurrection, receiving a 30-year prison sentence. Shane Ham has more from Seoul.
The judiciary delivered a clear message today that nobody is above the law, not even the president. In a ruling described as one of the most consequential in the country's history, judges at the Seoul Central District Court sentenced former President Yoon Suk-yeol to life in prison, determining that his declaration of martial law amounted to insurrection with the purpose of undermining the country's constitutional order. In its judgment, the court focused on evidence that the former president sought to paralyze the legislature by deploying military troops to the parliament. The presiding judge went over the facts one by one of that dramatic evening back in December 2024 while delivering the hour-long ruling. Today's decision sends a clear message that the president's emergency powers must only be exercised under clear and immediate national threats and cannot be used to resolve political conflict or bypass democratic institutions. Outside the courthouse, reactions were immediate and sharply divided.
The Republic of Korea's judiciary has delivered an outrageous verdict in what is clearly a political trial. During the proceedings, there were countless illegalities, and the testimony was fabricated. To hand down a life sentence based on this, I believe, is an act that betrays the people.
The accomplices have all been found guilty of insurrection, and the ringleader has received a life sentence. So there's really nothing more to ask for. I'm satisfied with the outcome.
Prosecutors in the case had initially sought the death penalty for Mr. Yoon, arguing that the former president's actions posed a direct threat to the nation's constitutional order. The last former president convicted on similar charges was Chun Doo-hwan, who was sentenced to death in the mid-90s, later commuted to life in prison, and ultimately pardoned. As for Mr. Yoon, the legal process is far from over. He now has 7 days to file an appeal, which is widely expected. If he does, the case will move to a higher court, potentially settling the stage for a prolonged legal battle that could ultimately reach the Supreme Court of Korea. In the meantime, today's decision is already being seen as a landmark ruling, sending a powerful signal about the limits of presidential authority and the strength of the country's constitutional safeguards. Shane Hom, CGTN, Seoul.
Iran has issued a notice for planned rocket launches. This comes according to CNN, with the U.S. military prepared to carry out strikes on Iran as early as this weekend, although a final decision from President Trump is still pending. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has warned that any new U.S. strike on Iran would have serious consequences and called for restraint from all parties. Iran's Foreign Minister Sayed Abbas Araghchi and the head of the UN's nuclear watchdog held a phone conversation on Wednesday to discuss the latest developments in the indirect negotiations between Tehran and Washington. During the call, Araghchi emphasized Iran's focus on developing what he called a preliminary and consistent framework to guide future talks. The Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Grossi, described the results of the latest negotiations as positive. He also voiced the IAEA's readiness to cooperate in developing that framework and supporting the overall process. However, following the second round of talks, Grossi also warned that time is running out for the negotiations. The White House is declining to set a specific deadline, adding it expects Tehran to present more details on its negotiating position within the coming weeks. You're watching Africa Live. Still ahead on the program. UN peacekeepers hand over civilian protection sites to the South Sudanese government. South Sudan's government says it is ready to take over camps being vacated by peacekeepers. But officials admit they are worried the closures could cost hundreds of local workers their jobs. Patrick Oyet with the details.
The United Nations mission in South Sudan says it has cut 15% of its running cost, scaling down its peacekeeping operations in the East African country. This means its peacekeepers in Malakal are withdrawing from the protection of civilian side. The facility is now transitioning to government control. It is now known as Internally Displaced Persons Camp.
We want to make sure that our humanitarian work also leads to transition, recovery, and resilience, empowering the local community, empowering local stakeholders so they can continue to live with dignity and stability in their life.
UNMISS had more than 20,000 staff and peacekeepers across South Sudan. The civilian Police and military personnel working with the mission are from 73 countries. The handover of Malakal camp to the government comes amid heightened tensions and clashes in parts of Upper Nile region. Malakal Protection of Civilian Site hosts 40,000 people. The camp houses both those who fled conflict within South Sudan and those who were forced out of Sudan.
We came here from Khartoum empty-handed. We left everything behind. There are people who even left their children behind. But I thank God that I'm here with my family. But now that this place is handed over to the government, I will not stay here. I will move out of the camp and go to another place where I feel protected.
UNMISS established protection of civilian sites manned by peacekeepers across South Sudan during the civil war. The camps have been sheltering tens of thousands of civilians. The work of the peacekeepers include protection of civilians and creating conditions conducive to the delivery of humanitarian assistance. The troops also support the implementation of the 2018 peace deal and monitor and investigate human rights abuse claims. South Sudan's government says it can man the camps being left by the peacekeepers. However, it says it is concerned that the closure of the bases will lead to loss of jobs for hundreds of locals. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
Zimbabwe has begun administering jabs of a new long-active injectable HIV prevention drug. The drug, called lenacapavir, is administered twice a year, with studies showing it can provide nearly complete protection against HIV acquisition. CGTN's Farai Mwakutuya has more from the nation's capital.
In Harare's Epworth suburb, health authorities and partners marked the launch of lenacapavir, an injectable HIV prevention drug expected to transform how people protect themselves against the virus. Among the first to receive the injection is Precious Chiwaya, who says the new drug offers longer and more reliable protection, but also some much-needed peace of mind she didn't have before.
I used to take the oral prep, but when I went to the clinic, I would only get a month's supply. Sometimes I wouldn't even get any because stocks were low. That was too risky for me, so I've chosen this option, which protects me for 6 months without any issues.
Zimbabwe has made major gains in HIV treatment access, with over 1.3 million people living with the virus and more than 90% of them accessing life-saving antiretroviral treatment. But health officials say new infections remain worryingly high, especially among adolescent girls and young women, underscoring the need for more effective prevention options.
This tells us into real life. If a health solution is too complicated, too demanding, or too visible, people simply won't use it. That is why innovation in prevention matters. Lenacapavir represents a new way of doing things.
Activists say the long-acting injection could be a game changer in lowering new infections.
It promotes adherence. There are people who struggle with daily methods, like oral PrEP, for instance. And so you can imagine if you're able to just get 2 jabs per year, it really does alter the way we look at things. In terms of HIV incidence or new infections, this is going to play a really huge role in reduction of new infections.
Experts have welcomed this new HIV prevention drug as a breakthrough, but insist that it's not a silver bullet. They say HIV prevention must still rely on medical and behavioral interventions. Despite the emergence of this powerful drug, authorities continue to promote the consistent use of condoms, maintaining fewer partners and open communication with partners as part of their broader fight against HIV. Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
And we now turn to Mali, where a rally has been held outside the Cuban embassy in Bamako. Leaders say they wanted to express solidarity with the island nation and to denounce what they call economic strangulation measures imposed on Havana generations of Cubans. on Havana. Generations of Cubans have been living under unilateral coercive measures imposed by Washington, with the UN saying they have an increasing impact on human rights. CGTN's Wanja Mungai reports.
At Cuba's embassy in Mali's capital, locals waved flags and placards condemning the U.S. for imposing harsh economic sanctions on Cubans. They say the sanctions imposed in 1960 harm ordinary Cuban citizens more than political leaders.
We demand that the U.S. government immediately end the blockade imposed on fuel supplies to Cuba, as well as the economic, commercial and financial blockade.
The event drew former Malian students in Cuba, activists and civil society members, many of whom say their support is rooted in historical ties and shared political ideals between African nations and Cuba.
They say Mali is the poorest country in the world, so why won't they leave us alone so we can develop? That's the question. We cannot remain idle. We cannot remain indifferent. The cause of humanity compels us to step forward, not only as former students in Cuba, but as human beings, as Malians.
Diplomatic representatives welcomed the show of support, describing it as a symbol of enduring friendship between nations of the global South.
I would like to once again thank the many expressions of solidarity received from Mali and from all corners of the world, from governments and socio-political organizations that have voiced their support for Cuba in the face of this new escalation of economic warfare, threats of military intervention, as well as all the humanitarian initiatives that have been undertaken.
While the gathering remained peaceful, observers say such demonstrations reflect growing public engagement in international issues and highlight how global political tensions resonate far beyond their regions of origin. Wanjamungai, CGTN.
Well, let's now go to Uche Okoronko for a look at the day's business news. Uche.
Thank you, Beatrice. And coming up on Africa Live Biz, we'll take a closer look at Egypt's decision to launch a citizenship by investment program. And conflict compounds a logging problem in Sudan that is devastating its forests.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Kanata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa. So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Well, let's start off in Côte d'Ivoire. The country is weighing up slashing cocoa farm gate prices in a bid to align with Ghana. And this all comes as the world's biggest producers of the chocolate ingredient are facing a major crisis. Now, officials say all options are on the table right now as the government debates whether to follow Ghana, which of course has already cut the prices it pays farmers by almost 30% for the rest of the 2025-26 season. Meanwhile, the Côte d'Ivoire-Ghana Cocoa Initiative says that the two African nations have been coordinating closely since the onset of this crisis in the sector. Cocoa futures on the ICE exchange hit their lowest level in about 30 months on Tuesday, and that is amid concerns over unsold stocks of cocoa in both nations. Well, heading to Egypt now, citizenship by investment, or CBI, is a legal process that allows individuals to acquire second passports by making a substantial financial contribution to a specific country. Well, in Egypt, foreigners can now get a passport for a minimum of $250,000 US. Now, experts say the country's strategic location as gateways to sub-Saharan Africa, Europe and Western Asia is, of course, its main draw. CGTN's Yasser Hakim has more.
Egypt's parliament has voted in favor of the government's proposed citizenship through investment program as it tries to create new sources of hard currency revenue.
There are several types of investments for citizenship. A person will either deposit $250,000 donation in the bank or buy real estate with a minimum $300,000. This type of money will be pumped into the economy for one time only. The preferred are investments in companies and industries with a minimum $300,000, which are more sustainable, creates jobs and supports long-term economic development.
This usually involves investing in government-approved real estate, donating to a national development fund, or starting a business that creates jobs. In return for the contribution, applicants and their families gain full citizenship rights, including visa-free travel, the right to live and work in the country, and in some cases, tax benefits.
Egypt's strategic location is the gateway to Africa and links Europe, Africa and the Middle East. We have cheap skilled labor and comparatively low energy prices with a high return on investments regionally. We introduced golden license that eliminates red tape for establishing businesses. Besides having legal rights as a citizen, the businessman will also receive a special tax incentive and can easily travel to Gulf states in the Middle East and several African countries.
Egypt currently enjoys economic security and political stability. Furthermore, there's an improvement in the business climate, a strong modern infrastructure for different industries, and incentives to attract foreign companies. Egypt's citizenship crucially opens up a huge global market for its investors as well.
We have the highest purchasing power in the region with our 110 million population. Our products also have free access to hundreds of millions of consumers in dozens of countries due to the numerous free trade agreements we signed in Africa and around the world.
The nationality is essential for owners to regularly follow up their assets without the hassle of entry visas or the very difficult residency procedures.
We expect Arab investors to be the majority as they believe in Egypt's citizenship and economic benefits. Then you have the Africans, especially a few Nigerian and Senegalese businessmen have expressed interest to invest and settle in Egypt, plus others who prefer stable emerging markets.
As a precondition, however, applicants must be in good health and have a clear police record. All investments must be in US dollars and transferred from abroad into a special account of the Citizenship by Investment Unit at the Central Bank of Egypt Treasury. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Now, in Sudan, the environment is amongst many sectors in the country, feeling the impact, of course, from the ongoing conflict. Now, signs of degradation and damage are pretty common right now as weak governance, of course, continues to imperil the future of many vulnerable areas. Amongst these are historic forests, south of the capital Khartoum, whose stock of trees has been virtually wiped out by illegal logging there. Well, CGTN's Ian Kinua reports it is having a devastating impact on the country's local ecosystem.
Only barren land and cut trunks now remain where dense acacia trees once formed a natural green belt along the Nile. The Al Sunut forest was once a 1,500 hectare reserve, a haven for wildlife and a shield against seasonal floods. After nearly 3 years of conflict, officials say it has been almost completely wiped out. Wood gatherers now cross the exposed ground, collecting what remains for firewood and charcoal. Authorities say insecurity and economic collapse have fueled unchecked logging.
The war had a significant impact on forests, particularly the acacia forest in Khartoum, which has witnessed extensive and excessive logging.
According to Sudanese forestry officials, Khartoum state has lost a significant share of its green cover since fighting erupted in April 2023. The forest was home to more than 100 bird species, including migratory birds arriving from Europe, as well as monkeys and small mammals.
The war's impact on forests led to environmental repercussions not only for Sudan, but also for the African continent, as the forest serves as a haven for migratory birds from Europe. The acacia forest is a very ancient forest, its history dating back to the Nile, and no human has ever interfered with its cultivation. It is a natural forest.
Environmental experts warn the consequences extend beyond biodiversity. Seasonal flooding, which already devastates parts of Sudan each year, could worsen without the forest's natural barrier.
If the floodwater comes in the same large quantities and with the same force, without any barrier or anything to mitigate their impact, this will affect the surrounding area because the forest used to act as a barrier against the danger of flooding.
The loss has also disrupted ecological balance.
The effects extended to animals such as monkeys, rodents, and some gerbils, which work to maintain ecological balance. After the forest was cleared, a large number of monkeys were displaced and may have become extinct or died.
Before the war, forests supplied much of Sudan's households with energy needs, primarily through firewood and charcoal. For many residents, Al-Sunut was also a place for leisure and study.
The acacia forest was a recreational place for us, and we used to come in groups to study and spend a pleasant time. It was also a source of income for some people.
Officials say replanting efforts are underway, but acacia trees grow slowly, and restoring what has been lost could take decades. Ian Kenywa, CGTN.
Now, Cameroon is also facing environmental problems where access to clean water in the country is a constant struggle for thousands of residents in the capital, Yaoundé. However, as CGTN's Najma Abdirazak reports, stakeholders are coming together to find a solution.
Taps running dry. It's a struggle that Luke Bilonga knows too well. For many in his neighborhood, every day is a constant worry of where to get enough to drink, cook or clean.
We're
in the neighborhood of Yaoundé. We have water problems in the morning, at noon and at night. And here, getting water is very difficult. It's very difficult to get water, whether it's in the morning or in the evening. We often use tap water, but we pay for it. Sometimes, a basin costs 100 francs when it's very hot, and it costs 50 francs when it rains a little. But I see that this has changed. A basin now always costs 100 francs, whether it rains or it's hot.
The pressing issue took center stage at the 23rd International Congress and Exhibition of the African Water and Sanitation Association held in Yaoundé. Over 4 days, nearly 3,000 experts from across Africa floated practical ideas to tackling water insecurity. One of those solutions is smart centers that train local entrepreneurs to produce, install and sell affordable water technologies like rope pumps, hand drill wells and rainwater harvesting systems.
So today, when I came across Smart Center, I decided that it was time for me to bring them to Cameroon, and they accepted. Today, they are here, and we are trying to partner, give exposure to calm water to the authority, to say where there's no calm water, we can represent them, to give people potable water, to make sure we create employment for youth to start digging wells, to start drilling wells, and then teaching them how to fabricate local tools, pump, the toilet system, as you can see, the pit toilet, where animals or flies or rats will not leave the toilet pit and go odorless toilet, many technologies.
To improve access to water and sanitation in African cities, it is essential to have resources, but also to know how to use them optimally. Using resources optimally means producing, treating, and distributing water at the lowest possible cost. By involving local communities, we can raise awareness of the importance of preserving resources, particularly water, whether the drinking water or water in general.
For families like Lux, dry taps still mean sleepless nights and tough choices. But with local innovations, big investments and Africa's collective shared push, they only hope to soon see their taps running full once again. Najma Abdurizak, CGTN.
Well, that is all for now on Africa Live Biz, but coming up later on Global Business Africa, we'll discuss why tomato traders in Ghana have suspended imports from neighboring Burkina Faso. Of course, more on that coming up at the top of the hour. For now, it is back to you, Beatrice.
Uche, thank you. Well, let's now take a look at your sports news. Here's what's ahead. Namibia bow out of the T20 Cricket World Cup winless after a big loss to Pakistan in Colombo.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours?